What's up, sports fans? This is the NCAA College Sports Channel. It is time to give you my official upset alert games heading into week number 13 of the 2025 college football season. Going back to my upset alert games from last week in week number 12, after that big weekend of college football, we only had 2 games turn out to be upset in that video. 2 upsets only played out in my games that I picked out for the weekend. We saw Cincinnati go down to Arizona. That one didn't really surprise me at all. And then we had Oklahoma beat Alabama. That was the big upset, of course, from last week, in my opinion. So how about week number 13? Are we in store for some big upsets this weekend? Honestly, looking at the schedule, there's not a lot of big games coming up this weekend, in my opinion. So I think it's kind of like, not a trap game, but it could be like one of those quiet weekends before we head into like the big weekend, a rivalry weekend next weekend, and also the last weekend of the regular season. So this might be a pretty quiet weekend, but you never know. An upset can occur anytime in any place. So let's go ahead and get into these 8 games that I picked out for you, the least likely, and working our way to the most likely upsets, in my opinion. So starting here with this one, Michigan at Maryland. This one will be at 4 o'clock Eastern Time on the Big Ten Network. Michigan favored by 13.5. Yeah, that's a pretty high number there. You got Michigan coming in 8-2. They're, sitting there with a chance to still make the college football playoff. The problem is, though, you got to wonder what Michigan's mindset is going into this game after, kind of a disappointing performance against Northwestern. They had 4 turnovers in that game, and Bryce Underwood was pressured so much in that game. And yeah, they nearly lost this game. So Michigan sitting there at 8-2. I feel like they should be 9-2, to be honest, or not. Yeah, actually 8-2. So yeah, that's their overall record. I don't know why I'm getting ahead of myself. But you look at Maryland, this has been a pretty tough team to watch this year. This is a team that started 4-0, and they've lost their last 6 games. So, although I don't think an upset will be possible here, but, based off of Michigan's performance last week in a trap game against Northwestern, you got to wonder if they're looking ahead to Ohio State next weekend, which obviously they could very well be looking ahead, and maybe they don't come in, with their A game in this one. So yeah, Michigan going to have to bring their A game, I think, in order to, prove to be a dominant team. But at the same time, they could go down this weekend if they're looking ahead to the Buckeyes next weekend. Next up, we have Kentucky at Vanderbilt, 3:30 Eastern Time on ESPN. Vanderbilt favored by 9.5 in this one. Vanderbilt's also got a lot of pressure on them. They're sitting there at 8-2. So I think if Vanderbilt loses another game, I think they're out of the college football playoff picture. But we've seen Vanderbilt this year. This is a pretty good football team. They used to be the laughing stock of the SEC before, divisions were, disappeared and not even exist anymore. This used to be the laughing stock of the SEC, and they have proven us that, they're a pretty good football team. Diego Pavia is one of the toughest quarterbacks in the country. But you look at this game, Kentucky is sitting there at 5-5. I know people are saying that an upset is definitely not going to be happening here, but look at Kentucky. They've been so much better as a team as of late. They've won 3 games in a row. I mean, Cutter Boley's been taking over and really giving a spark to this Kentucky football team. And yeah, Kentucky's sitting there, 1 win away from being bowl eligible. So Kentucky, I think, will definitely come in fired up here, especially with the winning streak that they have going for them. Vanderbilt cannot overlook this Kentucky team. What if they're looking ahead to the Tennessee game and just getting too excited for the playoff race? That definitely could, that really could happen here for Vanderbilt in this game. So yeah, Vanderbilt's favored by 9.5 in this one, and this one is at 3:30 Eastern Time on ESPN, and I wouldn't be surprised if we did see an upset play out here in the SEC. Next up, USC at Oregon, pretty much the game of the weekend, 3:30 Eastern Time on CBS. Oregon also favored by 9.5. USC and Oregon are pretty similar teams. They're both coming off wins against Iowa. Oregon definitely had a tougher performance, in my opinion, compared to USC, because the game went all into 4 quarters. For USC, they came back against Iowa last week, and yeah, that was a tough game, but, USC came back and did just, enough to survive, still be alive in the playoff race. And you look at this game, this is a massive game. This is a must-win here for USC, not only to beat Oregon, but also still be alive in the college football playoff race. And I think for Oregon, this is a game that they have to prove that they are not going to give up. I mean, this is an Oregon team that's been pretty dominant, not really dominant throughout the entire year, but they've kind of shown us that they've been pretty dominant, not as of late, but, they definitely had a better performance, I think, last week against Minnesota, and they've had a lot of time to prepare for this game, and they're also playing at home, so that definitely should give them the confidence, and I think they'll come in really fired up for this game and kind of prove to USC that they haven't given up yet, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised here if USC did pull off the upset, and if they do pull off the upset here, this really does shake up the Big Ten race, in my opinion, not only for the Big Ten championship, but also for the college football playoff race as well. But a must-win here for the Trojans. If they lose this game, their playoff hopes probably are going to be over with 3 losses. Next up, Tulane at Temple. So a group of 5 game. This one's at 3:45 Eastern time on ESPNU. Tulane favored by 8.5. Honestly, I don't know much about Temple. I mean, Tulane's a really good football team. I've seen them time and time this year, but not really that much. Again, I don't really study the group of 5 teams that much. But you got Temple here, based off of, the chaos that we've seen here in the American, it seems like the last 3 weeks, to be honest. I mean, you look at the chaos in the American, this could be one of those games where we have another big upset here play out. And, Tulane back then was upsetted by, a UTSA team that I believe was like 4-4. And yeah, so Tulane has lost a game like that before. Could that happen again here against Temple? Again, I don't know much about Temple. I'll be honest, I don't know much about the group of 5 teams. Again, I know that Tulane is a pretty good football team. I know that, but they're only an 8.5-point favorites on the road at Temple. This is definitely a trap game here for an 8-2 Tulane team. And if they win out, go 10-2, win the American Championship, I think Tulane does make the college football playoff. But they got to definitely win their last couple of games in order to not only just make it to the playoff, but also to the American Championship game as well. Next up, Missouri at Oklahoma, noon Eastern time on ABC. Oklahoma favored by 7.5 in this one. You got to wonder what Oklahoma's mindset is going into this game after especially the big win against Alabama from, last weekend. Are they going to be ready to go in this game? Are they kind of like celebrating too much after the Alabama win? You look at the other side, Missouri ranked number 22nd in the college football playoff rankings. They're sitting at 7-3. Yeah, this is a pretty good Missouri team. They've been pretty up and down as of late, though. Their starting quarterback went out with the injury, so that definitely, kind of did shake things up here for Missouri. They haven't been the same team ever since he went down with the injury, but still, you got to wonder what Oklahoma's mindset is going into this game because, again, that big win against Alabama, are they a little bit beat up, especially in that defensive battle? Is, John Mateer a little bit beat up, especially after running the football a bunch? I'll be honest, I don't know if I see an upset here playing out because Missouri, again, lost their starting quarterback, and I think that's definitely a disadvantage here for Missouri to handle. So, yeah, you look at Oklahoma, I think they definitely should be able to take care of business, but maybe they're kind of celebrating too much. You never know, but their playoff hopes are definitely on the line here the rest of the way. But I think if they get upset here, then I think Oklahoma's playoff hopes could be over. But again, they're favored by 7.5 for that reason. This is definitely a trap game here for the Sooners on Saturday. Next up, Tennessee at Florida, 7:30 Eastern time on ABC. Tennessee favored by 4.5. This is a rivalry game. Tennessee going on the road here to Florida in the Swamp. We know that Tennessee has struggled under Josh Heupel at Florida. And, Florida's definitely better than their record would suggest. This is a really talented 3-7 Florida team. And I know that this definitely shouldn't be an upset alert game. But look at the spread there. Tennessee only favored by 4.5. And I don't really disagree with that, that at all. Tennessee definitely maybe is a little bit overrated because, they're sitting there right there with 3 losses, ranked number 20th in the playoff rankings, which honestly, I don't think Tennessee should be ranked. I will be honest. I don't think Tennessee should be ranked. I know they're sitting there with 7-3 record, but they're already out of the playoff in my opinion. So this game doesn't really matter really much here for Tennessee, but at the same time, they would like to kind of win it here because they've really struggled here in the Swamp against the Gators over, the last couple of decades. I don't know when the last time Tennessee beat Florida in Gainesville, but it's definitely been a really long decade since, maybe it's a long 2 decades, since they beat them. So yeah, Tennessee again, I think they're on upset alert here. Again, I think Florida is definitely better than what their record would suggest. They've had a lot of close games this year, and they almost had a really big upset play out last week against Ole Miss. So I think they'll definitely be fired up for this game, even though their season has not gone really well at all. Next up, Pittsburgh at Georgia Tech, 7 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN. Georgia Tech favored by 2.5. Both of these teams coming in with similarities from last week. They both struggled in their games. They were almost, they almost lost their games. Georgia Tech was able to beat Boston College, but they struggled against a 1-win Boston College team, which definitely did surprise me a lot. This is not the same Georgia Tech team that I feel like we've seen, probably since, the first half of the year, or maybe like, a little bit of the second half of the year as well. Since that NC State loss, it's really gotten into their heads. And then you look at Pittsburgh. They were not competitive at all against Notre Dame. Could they probably look ahead to this game is probably the question. They just did not look good against Notre Dame. They just, they were not ready for the moment, and College Game Day was down there, so maybe the hype definitely got to their head, and they just weren't that competitive. So maybe Pittsburgh was kind of looking ahead to this game, and this is a very important game for both teams, not only for Georgia Tech, to still make it to the college football playoff, but also still make it to the ACC championship. Pittsburgh still has a pretty good shot because that Notre Dame game was a non-conference game, and they still have one loss in the ACC. So I think whoever wins this game is going to probably make it to the ACC championship, while the loser is probably going to, lose and, not make it to the ACC championship at all. So a very important game here for both of these teams, but I think it's definitely a more important game here for Pitt, and I think also definitely maybe a little bit for Georgia Tech as well. And then finally, BYU at Cincinnati, 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox. BYU favored by 2.5. BYU coming off a huge win against TCU, a much-needed bounce-back win against TCU last week after a couple weeks ago losing to Texas Tech. BYU still sitting there in the second-place spot for the Big 12 championship. Cincinnati obviously coming off, I just talked about them earlier. They're coming off that tough loss to Arizona. You got to wonder if Cincinnati was looking ahead to this game instead of last week's game, and that really can kill you. When you overlook a team, from this weekend, it really can just make you so fired up here for this game this weekend. And yeah, I think Cincinnati will come in fired up. They definitely have a shot to pull off the upset. But I think based off of how BYU played last week, I don't know if an upset definitely could occur here. And every time I doubt this BYU team, they always continue to prove me wrong. And then other times they just don't play that great. So that's definitely an obvious question. Which BYU team is going to show up? Is it the BYU team that we saw against Texas Tech? Or is it going to be the BYU team against lesser opponents that they've been dominating? So keep an eye on this one. If Cincinnati wins, I think that's going to create chaos in the second place spot for the Big 12. But if BYU wins, I think they have a clear path to have a rematch with Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship. So that is my upset alert games heading into Week 13 of this 2025 college football season. Again, maybe expecting a quiet week, but you never know. Upsets can happen anytime at any place. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more on the NCAA College Sports YouTube channel.